PokeClass is sponsored by Collector's Cash, your #1 online store for all you need for the Pokemon trading card game. They always have the cards you need at great prices, even the ones that are hard to find anywhere else. Make sure you check them out for all your singles, packs, boxes, accessories, and cards from other games at www.collectorscash.com. Welcome to PokeClass episode 37. We are currently just 1 week away from the Pokemon TCG World Championships, the biggest event of the year, and I'm sure many of you are excited to not only play in the tournament, but keep track of what's going down. Since we've had the premature rotation to Heart Gold Soul Silver on, there is still little room for fairly unheard of ideas to be made public, since we are talking about the minds of the world here, coming together to showcase what they believe to be the best decks. It certainly is an exciting time for all players. Last week, I talked in depth about how to approach playing in the last chance qualifiers, but I didn't talk about decks or give you any deck lists to give you more ideas. So this week, I'm going to be doing just that. But first, here's some news. Probably the biggest bit of news from the past week has been very controversial to say the least. Almost a month ago, the Professor Cup for North America took place, and was apparently quite the occasion as usual. The winners were crowned and everything was fine, up until now. Just recently, an article was posted by the winner of the Professor Cup, stating that he actually wasn't a professor at all. This article has sparked discussion on pretty much every Pokemon site you can think of, and most people aren't happy about it. I'm not going to say how I feel on the matter, since enough has already been said, but I do feel that it's gotten way out of hand already. Many things have been said about the person who did this, and all I'm going to say is that the higher ups at Pokemon already know and are dealing with this, and it isn't looking too great for the person involved. I would normally ask you to discuss what I highlight in the news, and would like you to, but please keep it under control and dignified. We don't want to be setting a bad example in the community. Now on to something a bit more light. PokeBeach.com revealed a few days ago that Pokemon have teamed up with Ultra Pro, the company that makes some of the best sleeves and other accessories for many card games, to bring us the first official Pokemon playmat set for release in stores. This is what the design looks like, and I don't think it looks too bad. The release of this map is probably following the popularity of the recent Heart Gold Soul Silver ones, which were only obtainable through raffles at premier events such as cities and states. I still like the Heart Gold Soul Silver ones better myself, but this is certainly a step in the right direction for more widely available playmats, which is good news for all of us. They're set to retail at around $18, which I think is a fair price, since I've seen the Heart Gold Soul Silver ones go for a lot more, and I plan to hit the shelves in local stores in September. So that's all the best news from this week, so let's get on to today's episode. The biggest tournament of the year is now upon us, the World Championships. With just 1 week to go, all of you attending both the last chance qualifiers and the main event should be almost completely done with choosing your deck and be in the final stages of testing for all you should come across. For those of you that have had multiple decks on the go and just can't choose what to go for, then this is the episode for you. I'm going to go over 3 or 4 main decks that you should consider playing and preparing for when entering this huge tournament. Let's get to it. First up, we have the deck to beat at the moment, Yanmega Magnezone. This deck was originally one of the secret decks of the national stages, being played and tested by many of the top players in the US, and taking them far as well. As many as you know, Justin Sanchez took first place with the deck, and #1 ranked player in the world at the moment, Jason Harry, took the deck to third in the same tournament. This just shows how well the deck can perform, and it's come some way since that tournament in terms of variants and techs people have tried out. Everyone should know how the deck works by now, but if you don't, then Yanmega is there for a speedy attacker that can start taking prizes from turn 1, and Magnezone is there to keep the deck as consistent as possible, as well as act as a big attacker later in the game. This duo can rack up some serious prizes very quickly, making it a force to contend with this year. So if you want to run this deck, this is the kind of thing you should be going for. This list has been taken from the testing zone on my website, so check it out if you want a complete list of techs, since I'll only go over a couple of the main ones here. The most popular tech right now you should expect or consider playing is a 101 Kingdra Prime line. This card gives you that extra 10 damage you need to topple certain KOs with Lost Burn, like in the case of Yanmega Prime. You'll only need to Lost Burn 2 energy instead of 3 to KO this popular Pokemon, keeping your energy around for later in the game and for those bigger KOs. If you are doing this, then you may want to put an extra rare candy in to make it up to 4 and keep as consistent as possible when you need to get it out. I haven't tried this tech out properly yet, but a lot of people are standing by it as a mandatory inclusion, but trying out yourself will help you make the right choice. Another choice is the option of Rescue Energy. Including this will give you more Yanmegas for the game, so that you can recycle them often and keep on the offensive. You'll also be able to bounce those Magnezones back to the hand when they're close to getting KO'd, meaning that you can have the extra copy to place back onto the field with some good planning. Playing against this deck, you're going to need to KO those Magnemites fast and put them under pressure as soon as possible. Denying them of those Magnezones by the mid game means that they won't have that consistency to stay on the offensive, giving you the chance to keep a steady prize lead throughout. Cards like Reversal will keep you on top of those Magnemites early on and improve your chances considerably. Reversaling Magnezones up before they have energy on is also not a bad idea. So overall, this deck will be played and will be there in high numbers, so make sure you test against this deck as much as possible. Having a good matchup against this will pay off on the day. The second deck I want to mention is Donphan Yanmega Zoroark, also known as Stage 1s or Stage 1 Rush. This was the deck that Puka piloted to the second place at US Nationals, and it also won the Seniors division, making it a deck to make note of. This is the list you can find on the testing zone, and it's a pretty straightforward one. This deck doesn't have a whole load of room to work with text because of all the draw support it needs, and it sure does need it to make it as fast as possible. If you don't know yet, this deck focuses on getting one of your 3 attackers out as soon as turn 2 to get the first KO in on your opponent's most valuable Pokemon. Using cards like Reversal and Junkarm keeps the prizes coming, and it can easily take 3 prizes in 3 turns, putting you under a lot of pressure from the get-go. If you're running this deck, there are a few things you can do to improve some matchups you may come across. The first is Plus Power. This card will bring cards such as Magnezone into one-hit KO range, and that's something that's going to be invaluable since it features in the most popular deck at the moment, as mentioned above. This card will also do wonders against Reshiram and Zekrom when you need to get those one-hit KOs with Zoroark, and can be reused multiple times per game to drag those KOs into range. I would definitely consider putting these in before anything else. Another almost staple to this deck is Bouffalant from Black and White. This card is a beefy 100 HP basic that can take full advantage of the double colourless you have in your deck. Revenge is the perfect attack to return the KO against Zekrom and even Yanmega when paired with Plus Power or any previous damage placed on the board. 90 damage after suffering a KO is nothing to shy away from, and can set up a very nice KO later on in the game if you can't take full advantage of it straight away. When playing against the deck, you're really going to need an answer to Donphan, or have some way of getting big damage onto it before it becomes one. KOing Phanpies early on with Yanmega is a great way to limit how many they can set up during the game, and be wary of Zoroark copying any of your big attacks next turn if it's lurking on your opponent's bench. Overall, this deck is extremely fast and can take prizes so quickly, making it one of my top choices for grinders as well as the actual event. It stays consistent since it doesn't need to rely on rare candy, and can pack a load of draw supporters in their place. Definitely one to watch out for. The third deck I'm going to mention is an up and coming one to the competitive scene, and will only get better as the next season progresses. Reshiram Typhlosion focuses on getting your big attacker hitting for 120 damage every single turn, with the help of Typhlosion's dragging of energy from the discard pile, as well as having the ability to draw cards every turn with Ninetales' support. Here's the list located at the testing zone, and there really isn't a whole load of options with this one either. It's a very tight list right now, and there aren't many cards that you can include to make it your own, unless you sacrifice consistency, something you really don't want to be doing in grinders. When building the deck, you could include Pokemon Reversal. This card is perfect when paired with a high count of Junkarm already in the deck, since you can reuse it multiple times per turn to get that heads and drag up whichever Pokemon you like. Being able to bring up any Pokemon your opponent is setting up, and then KO it with a huge 120 attack, means that you'll be able to gain a great advantage over your opponent and keep the pressure on consistently. This can also be used for those annoying baby Pokemon that stay asleep in front of your huge Reshiram. A second consideration is my personal favourite for this deck, Revive. You can't be running 5 Reshiram in a deck, so this card is the next best thing. Your Reshirams are already tough to KO in any situation, but when you keep bouncing them back to the field when suffering a KO, it allows you to stay on the attacking strategy. Having access to one more Reshiram just gives you that late game recovery you need to get that last prize from your opponent. When playing against the deck, you should definitely aim for getting Ninetales off the field in the early stages. If they have access to all those extra cards, they're going to be able to get Typhlosion out a lot quicker than you can deal with it, so grab the chance to KO a Vulpix early on if you can. If you can't do that, then reversing up a Typhlosion should be your next port of call. Reshirams are going to be really tough to take down in one hit if you don't have Zoroark or another big attacker, so make sure you keep track of potential outrage damage if you're tacking it onto Reshiram. Overall, this deck is a big contender and can be very consistent if Ninetales hits the field. It's also a pretty easy deck to play, so it could be a good option for the grinders too. For the main event, this deck is still a great choice. It has good matchups across the board, especially against Yanmega and Kingdra, two Pokemon expected to be big players at the top tables. I'm going to talk about one more deck to look out for at this year's tournament, since it's had such big success at various nationals so far, and the deck is Zekrom. This deck features another of those huge HP basics and focuses on getting Zekrom hitting for 120 as soon as the first turn, meaning that setting up something to take it down is going to be one tough task if it gets going. By using Pachirisu to get those energy down onto the field and Shaymin to move them onto your Zekrom, you should be able to get it going most of the time. This is the list I have up on the testing zone, and it looks fairly vanilla at the moment, with 13 to 15 spaces for you to work with. These spaces are going to be best filled with more consistency cards to get that Bolt Strike on the first turn as many times as possible. Your first option is a higher count of either Pachirisu or Shaymin. Putting either of these up to 3 will allow you to get more energy onto the field or have the option to move it around more freely throughout the game. I'd personally put them both up to 3 if I were to run it, just so that you have that larger chance of having both in your starting hand, and it will give you more options when playing. A second choice, if you're thinking of going with Zekrom, is adding in Yanmega Prime. Yanmega is the most popular card at the moment, and for good reason, but in this deck, it acts fairly well as a Donphan Prime counter. Donphan will KO your Zekroms in one hit, with the help of a plus power, making it very hard for you to keep up with getting Bolt Strike going, especially when it doesn't KO Donphan by itself. Yanmega can either buy you some time to get a decent bench going, or can start chipping away at Donphan's HP, so that you're in the range of a Bolt Strike when the time comes. I'm not too sure how well this works in the list, since both winning lists didn't run Yanmega, but it's definitely one to test out if you're having big trouble with any fighting types. Playing against this deck, you're going to need to make the game a long one, keeping track of their used resources, as well as trying to set up an attacker that can handle Zekrom in 1 or 2 hits. Keep aware of outrage, as you should with Reshiram, and if the game is going long, make sure you have a reliable attacker to stay as offensive as possible, possibly turning the game around while they struggle for those last few prizes. Overall, this deck is fast when it gets the ideal setup, and will usually get the win if that happens. However, if it doesn't dominate by the mid game, it will start to fizzle out and can struggle to grab those last few prizes while your opponent makes a comeback. This is probably a much stronger choice for grinders than the actual event, since it's designed well for single elimination play, but the amount of Donphan I'd expect you to see could put you in a tough spot. Zekrom is just going to be one of those to watch out for if it gets going. Other decks you should be aware of are Yanmega Kingdra variants, one of my favourite decks at the moment, along with Vileplume decks, which are both set to shake up the tournament a little bit. More info is available at my website in the description below. So that's all the advice I have for you before the event. Good luck to all of you that are going to grinders and participating in the main event, and let's hope we can see a UK player come home with the title in hand. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode, and make sure you head over to the testing zone if you want more in-depth analysis on all the decks mentioned this week. Just before I go, let me tell you about a fairly important event coming up. PokeClass is going to be celebrating its 1-year anniversary of weekly episodes at the end of August, and I have some great things planned to increase the series in terms of quality and content. My biggest change is that I'm actually going to be featuring in the episodes myself, rather than you just hearing my voice. You've all spent the past year watching images and listening to my voice, which I'm eternally grateful for, and I've finally decided to show you all who I am and feel it'll make episodes a lot less formal and more enjoyable for all of you. If you follow me on Twitter and have read my 6 prizes articles, you should have a good idea of what I look like already. But presenting the show in person is going to bring some great changes to the show, including a new intro and artwork as well. I hope you all look forward to the anniversary, and I'll let you know which episode will debut the new format. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Thanks for watching this episode of PokeClass. Make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you next week where we'll be anticipating the outcome of Worlds. Thanks for watching.